Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Reaching her front door, Della paused, her hand on the doorknob. Would crossing the threshold reverse the transformation? Would she find herself back in Neil's body? The magic of the evening nothing more than a beautiful dream? Taking a deep breath, Della opened the door and stepped inside. She felt the same wave of energy pass over her, but when she looked down, she saw that nothing had changed. She was still Della, still in the floral sundress, still completely and wonderfully herself. Relief and joy washed over her. This wasn't temporary. This was real, permanent. She had truly become the person she was always meant to be. Della moved through her apartment, seeing it with new eyes. The space that had once felt like Neil's refuge now felt like her home. She ran her fingers along the furniture, imagining how she might redecorate to better reflect her personality. In the bedroom, she opened the closet where she'd hidden her feminine clothes. They were all still there, but now they hung alongside other outfits, clothes that fit her new body perfectly, clothes she'd never bought but somehow knew were hers. Della changed into a comfortable nightgown, marveling at how natural it felt. She removed her makeup, pleased to see that her features remained soft and feminine, even without it. As she brushed out her long hair, she caught sight of herself in the mirror and couldn't help but smile. The person looking back at her was Della. Not Neil pretending to be Della, not Della trapped in Neil's body, but simply and truly Della. It was a sight she knew she'd never tire of seeing. As she crawled into bed, Della's mind was buzzing with thoughts of the future. There was so much to consider, so many aspects of her life that would need to change. How would she explain her transformation to her colleagues, to her family? What about her legal documents, her medical records? But those were concerns for tomorrow. Tonight, Della was content to bask in the joy of finally being herself. As she drifted off to sleep, a smile played on her lips. For the first time in her life, she was excited to wake up in the morning, eager to see what each new day would bring. Della's dreams that night were peaceful and untroubled. Gone were the visions of transformation that had haunted Neil's sleep. Instead, she dreamed of simple, everyday moments, walking in the park, chatting with friends, going about her day as herself. In her dreams, as in her new reality, Della was complete. The sound of birdsong gradually pulled Della from her slumber. She stretched languidly, relishing the feel of soft sheets against her skin. For a moment, she kept her eyes closed, savoring the peaceful feeling that enveloped her. When she finally opened her eyes, Della was greeted by the soft morning light filtering through her curtains. She sat up slowly, half expecting to find that the events of the previous night had been nothing more than an elaborate dream. But as she looked down at herself, she saw the same feminine form she'd marveled at the night before. Her long hair tumbled over her shoulders, and when she raised a hand to brush it back, she saw slender fingers with neatly manicured nails. A wide smile spread across Della's face. It was real. All of it was real. She climbed out of bed and padded to the bathroom, eager to see herself in the mirror. The face that greeted her was undeniably feminine, soft features, clear skin, expressive eyes framed by long lashes. Della touched her cheek, still amazed by the smoothness of her skin. As she went about her morning routine, Della found herself constantly distracted by her reflection. She'd catch glimpses of herself in the mirror and pause, marveling at the way she moved, the way her body looked in her nightgown, the way her hair fell around her face. It wasn't until she'd finished washing her face that a sudden thought struck her. Work. What was she going to do about work? Della's job, Neil's job, was waiting. She couldn't simply not show up, but how could she possibly explain what had happened? The idea of trying to pass as Neil, of forcing herself back into that ill-fitting persona, made her feel physically ill. She sat on the edge of her bed, her mind racing. She could call in sick, buy herself some time to figure things out, but that would only delay the inevitable. Sooner or later, she would have to face the world as Della. As she pondered her options, Della's gaze fell on her phone. She picked it up, surprised to see several notifications waiting for her. There were emails from work, messages from friends, even a missed call from her mother. With trembling fingers, Della opened her work email first. To her astonishment, the emails were all addressed to Della. They spoke of projects she was working on, meetings she was scheduled to attend, as if she'd always been Della in her professional life. Feeling a mixture of relief and confusion, Della checked her text messages next. They too were addressed to Della, filled with inside jokes and casual conversation that implied long-standing friendships. Even the missed call from her mother had a voicemail attached, her mom's voice warm as she said, "Hey, sweetie, just checking in. Give me a call when you can. Love you." Della sat back, her mind struggling to process this new information. It seemed that her transformation hadn't just been physical. Somehow the entire world had shifted to accommodate her new identity. To everyone else, she had always been Della. The realization was both comforting and overwhelming. On one hand, it meant she wouldn't have to explain her transformation to anyone. There would be no awkward conversations, no need to come out or justify her existence. On the other hand, it meant navigating a life she had no memory of living, relationships she'd never actually formed. Della took a deep breath, trying to center herself. She could do this. She would do this. After all, wasn't this exactly what she'd wanted? To live as her true self, to be accepted and recognized as Della? With newfound determination, Della stood up and walked to her closet. She surveyed the clothes hanging there, all perfectly suited to her new body and style. After some consideration, she selected a smart blouse and pencil skirt, pairing them with comfortable heels. As she dressed, Della found muscle memory taking over. Her fingers deftly fastened small buttons, adjusted her bra straps, zipped up her skirt. It was as if her body knew exactly what to do, even if her mind was still catching up. Makeup came next. Della sat at her vanity, surveying the array of products laid out before her. Again, her hands seemed to know exactly what to reach for, applying foundation, blush, and eyeshadow with practiced ease. She finished with a swipe of pink lipstick, pressing her lips together to even out the color. The woman who looked back at her from the mirror was polished and professional, ready to take on the world. Della smiled at her reflection, feeling a surge of confidence. She could do this. She would do this. Grabbing her purse and keys, Della headed out the door. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, filling her with energy. She walked to her car, a sleek sedan she didn't remember owning, but somehow knew how to drive, and set off for work. As she navigated the familiar streets, Della found her anxiety melting away. This was her life now. She belonged here, in this body, in this world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them as herself, as Della. Pulling into the parking lot of her office building, Della took a final deep breath before stepping out of the car. She straightened her skirt, adjusted her blouse, and walked towards the entrance with her head held high. The security guard at the front desk greeted her by name as she passed, and Della returned the greeting with a warm smile. In the elevator, a colleague joined her, chatting casually about an upcoming project deadline. Della found herself responding naturally, drawing on knowledge she didn't know she possessed. Arriving at her floor, Della made her way to her office. She recognized the space immediately, though she'd never seen it before. Family photos on the desk showed her with parents and siblings she'd never met as Della. A degree on the wall bore her name. Della Andrews, not Neil Thompson. As she settled into her chair, booting up her computer, Della felt a sense of surrealism wash over her. Everything was familiar yet new, known yet unknown. It was as if she'd stepped into a parallel universe where she'd always been Della, always lived this life. The day progressed smoothly, much to Della's relief and amazement. She attended meetings, responded to emails, and engaged in water-cooler chat with ease. Her colleagues treated her with the familiarity of longtime coworkers. and Della found herself slipping into the role as if she'd been playing it for years. By the time lunch rolled around, Della was feeling more comfortable in her new skin. She joined a group of co-workers at a nearby cafe, laughing and chatting over salads and sandwiches. As she listened to them discuss weekend plans and office gossip, Della felt a warm sense of belonging. These people knew her, not as Neil pretending to be someone else, not as a person in transition, but as Della. They accepted her without question because, to them, there was no question to be asked. She was simply their friend and colleague, a woman they'd known and worked with for years. As the afternoon wore on, Della found herself settling into a rhythm. The work was challenging but satisfying, and she discovered that she had skills and knowledge she'd never possessed as Neil. It seemed that along with her physical transformation, she'd also gained the experience and expertise of a life lived as Della. When 5 o'clock rolled around, Della shut down her computer and gathered her things. As she was about to leave, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from someone named Emma, asking if she was still on for their weekly wine and movie night. Della hesitated for a moment, then typed out a reply. "Absolutely. See you at 7?" As she drove home, Della's mind was buzzing with thoughts and questions. Who was Emma? How long had they been friends? What kind of movies did they usually watch together? But alongside the uncertainty was a sense of excitement. This was her life now, full of friendships and routines she was just beginning to discover. Each new interaction was an opportunity to learn more about herself, about the person she'd become. Arriving home, Della changed into more comfortable clothes, soft leggings, and an oversized sweater that felt like a warm hug. She ordered takeout from a nearby Thai restaurant, somehow knowing exactly what to order without looking at a menu. At precisely 7 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Della opened it to find a smiling woman holding a bottle of wine. "Hey, you!" The woman, presumably Emma, greeted her warmly. "Ready for our weekly dose of terrible rom-coms?" Della laughed, the sound coming naturally. "You know it," she replied, stepping aside to let Emma in. "I've got the food ordered, you've got the wine. Looks like we're all set." As they settled onto the couch, opening the wine and queuing up a movie, Della felt a sense of contentment wash over her. This felt right. This felt like home. The evening passed in a blur of laughter, wine, and playful commentary on the cheesy movie they'd chosen. Della found herself relaxing into the friendship, discovering that she and Emma had an easy rapport that spoke of years of shared experiences. When Emma finally left, promising to text her about their plans for the weekend, Della closed the door and leaned against it, smiling to herself. This day, her first full day as Della, had been more perfect than she could have imagined. As she got ready for bed, Della caught sight of herself in the mirror. The face that looked back at her was happy, relaxed, at peace. This was who she was meant to be. This was her life now. Crawling into bed, Della felt a profound sense of gratitude for the mysterious transformation that had brought her here, for the world that had shifted to accept her, for the life she was now living, a life that felt more authentic and fulfilling than anything she'd experienced as Neil. As she drifted off to sleep, Della's last thought was one of pure contentment. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new challenges, new joys, and she was ready for all of it, ready to live fully and completely as herself, as Della. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of discovery for Della. Each day brought new experiences, new memories, new aspects of herself to explore. She threw herself into her life with enthusiasm, eager to learn everything she could about the person she'd become. At work, Della excelled. She found that she had a natural talent for project management, able to juggle multiple tasks with ease and keep her team motivated. Her colleagues respected her opinions and often sought her advice on difficult problems. It was a far cry from Neil's middling career, and Della reveled in the sense of accomplishment it brought her. Her social life blossomed as well. Emma, it turned out, was just one of many close friends in Della's circle. There was Mark, a gay man who was her shopping buddy and confidant. Ashley, a co-worker turned friend who shared Della's love of yoga and healthy living. Thomas, a charming literature professor who flirted shamelessly with her at every group gathering. Della found herself constantly surprised by the depth and richness of these relationships. They were filled with inside jokes, shared memories, and the kind of comfortable intimacy that only comes from years of friendship. Though she had no recollection of forming these bonds, Della felt their authenticity in her very core. Family relationships took on a new dimension as well. Della's parents, it seemed, had always been supportive of their daughter. Weekly phone calls with her mother were filled with loving concern and gentle teasing. Her father, a man of few words, showed his affection through small gestures, sending her funny memes or calling to check if she needed any help with home repairs. Even her body continued to be a source of discovery. Della marveled at the way it moved, the sensations it experienced. She found joy in simple physical activities, the stretch and burn of a yoga session, the rhythm of her feet hitting the pavement during a morning jog, the warmth of the sun on her skin as she relaxed in the park. This was who she was meant to be. This was the life she was meant to live. One sunny Saturday morning, about 6 months after her transformation, Della found herself sitting in her favorite cafe, sipping a latte and people-watching, as she observed the diverse crowd around her. As Della sat in the cafe, her attention was drawn to a couple seated at a nearby table. They were engaged in an animated conversation, their hands gesticulating excitedly as they spoke. The woman's laughter rang out, clear and melodious, causing several other patrons to glance their way with amused smiles. Della found herself studying the woman more closely. There was something familiar about her, a sense of déjà vu that Della couldn't quite place. The woman's chestnut hair fell in soft waves around her face, her green eyes sparkling with mirth as she listened to her companion. Her posture was confident, her movements graceful and self-assured. As Della watched, the woman reached across the table to place her hand over her companion's, the gesture both casual and intimate. It was then that Della noticed the ring on the woman's finger, a simple gold band adorned with a small, tasteful diamond. A memory stirred in the back of Della's mind, hazy and indistinct. She'd seen that ring before, but where? She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the elusive recollection. Suddenly, it hit her. The ring. It was the one Neil had bought years ago, hidden away in the back of a drawer, never given to its intended recipient. Della's eyes flew open, her heart racing as she looked back at the woman. It was Maria, Neil's college girlfriend, the woman he'd planned to propose to before fear and confusion had driven them apart, the woman who had unknowingly set Neil on the path that led to Della's existence. Della's mind reeled with the implications. If Maria was here in this cafe wearing that ring, what did it mean? Had the shifting of reality that accompanied Della's transformation changed Maria's past as well? Before she could process these thoughts, Maria looked up, her eyes meeting Della's across the crowded cafe. For a moment, there was no recognition in her gaze. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. She said something to her companion and stood up, making her way towards Della's table. "Della," Maria said as she approached, her voice warm and friendly. "I thought that was you. It's been ages. How are you?" Della stood, accepting the hug Maria offered with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Maria, hi. I'm good. How are you?" As they exchanged pleasantries, Della's mind worked overtime, trying to piece together this new reality. It seemed that in this version of events, she and Maria knew each other, were friends even. But how? What was their shared history in this rewritten world? "Oh, where are my manners?" Maria said suddenly, turning to gesture at her companion, who had joined them. "Della, you remember my husband, James, right?" The man, James, smiled warmly at Della, extending his hand. "Of course, how could I forget? You were the one who introduced us, after all." Della shook his hand automatically, her mind spinning. She had introduced them? How was that possible? Right, of course, Della managed to say, forcing a smile. How could I forget? It's great to see you both. As they chatted, bits and pieces of this new narrative began to fall into place in Della's mind. Apparently, she and Maria had been roommates in college. They'd remained close friends after graduation, and it was at one of Della's parties that Maria had met James. The ring, the one Neil had bought, had never existed in this timeline. Instead, it was James who had proposed to Maria 2 years into their relationship. Della had been a bridesmaid at their wedding. As Maria recounted some shared memory from their college days, Della found herself relaxing into the conversation. Despite the initial shock, there was a comfort in this version of events, a sense of rightness that she couldn't quite explain. We should really get together soon, Maria was saying as the conversation wound down. Maybe dinner next week? I know Emma's been wanting to see you too. We could make it a group thing. Della nodded, surprised to find that she was genuinely looking forward to the prospect. That sounds wonderful. Just let me know when and where. As Maria and James said their goodbyes and returned to their table, Della sank back into her chair, her mind buzzing with this new information. She picked up her now cold latte, taking a sip as she tried to process everything. In this new reality, she had never been Neil. She had never struggled with gender identity, never bought a ring for Maria, never let fear drive them apart. Instead, she had lived a full life as Della, forming friendships, shaping events, being an integral part of others' stories. The realization was both thrilling and sobering. This wasn't just about her anymore. Her transformation, her new existence as Della, had ripple effects that touched the lives of everyone around her. As Della gathered her things and prepared to leave the cafe, she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, content, at peace with herself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.